Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, and today we're continuing in the recently established tradition of boringly unimaginative video titles. This is HMS Edinburgh, Tier 8 British Town Class Light Cruiser. It's being played for us today by Umbray on the Trident map, and my original intention in today's video was to do what I did recently for the Leander, for example, and cover the historical details of the ship class, in this case the Town Class Cruiser in general, and HMS Edinburgh specifically. But that's not really going to happen today because the action in this particular battle is so thick and fast, it would just be a distraction. Nevertheless, the Edinburgh was remarkable for one reason. Not so much its war service, which was solid if unspectacular. Edinburgh's war service during World War II mostly consisted of convoy escort duties. She did play a minor role in some of the unsuccessful searches for the Scharnhorst, but most of the time when the Edinburgh was at sea, she was escorting convoys bound for Soviet Russia, taking Lend-Lease supplies and equipment in one direction and escorting empty merchantmen on the way home. And it was on one of these return convoys in 1942 when she was torpedoed by U-456 under the command of Captain Lieutenant Max Martin Tykert. Now, while the torpedo did inflict substantial damage, it wasn't critical damage, and the major immediate threat to the ship was the amount of water that she was taking on board. The quick reactions of the crew in closing down the watertight bulkheads around the damaged compartment saved the ship from sinking immediately. Unfortunately for the Edinburgh, she was then torpedoed again, and this time it hit a steering gear, which basically left the ship crippled. Unable to steer and unable to generate an awful lot of power, the ship was taken under tow by a pair of destroyers, and with an escort of 4 minesweepers began to proceed at a very, very slow pace back to Britain. All the while under continuous attack from German long-range torpedo bombers, and it was a couple of days later when she ran into the large German destroyers, the Hermann Schumann, the Z-24 and the Z-25, at which point she cast off her towing cables, and of course with the steering gear crippled, began to sail in very large circles while attempting to defend herself as her escorts attempted to drive the German destroyers off. She managed to put so much effective fire into the Hermann Schumann that the crew were forced to scuttle her, and while the minesweeper and destroyer escorts did chase off the Z-24 and the Z-25, Edinburgh was hit by another torpedo that had actually been aimed at another ship. This torpedo hit on exactly the opposite side of the ship to where the original torpedo struck, which effectively meant that the only thing holding the front and back of the Edinburgh together was her deck and keel plating. It was decided to abandon the ship. The minesweepers took most of the crew off, and they attempted to sink her with depth charges. But the ship just refused to go down. Eventually, one of the destroyers used its final torpedo, having used the others in the attack on the Z-24 and the Z-25, to finally put the old girl on the bottom. Why go to so much trouble over one town-class cruiser? I mean, 2 destroyers and 4 minesweepers sounds like a bit of an over-the-top escort for a damaged cruiser. Well, you see, the Edinburgh wasn't empty on the way home, unlike all of the merchantmen that she'd been escorting. She was carrying just short of 500 bars of Russian gold, partial payment from the Soviet government for the Lend-Lease supplies that Britain had been sending to Russia. And it all went to the bottom of the Atlantic. And we're just going to momentarily interrupt the history lesson for a triple award, first blood, devastating strike and close quarters expert on the enemy Tier 8 Akatsuki destroyer there. And of course he's sitting in smoke, so he's used his hydroacoustic search. Plenty of warning that those torpedoes are coming, although apparently not quite enough warning for the Bismarck in front of him, who was actually in his division. Not bad. Not a bad start to the game. That was his secondaries that finished the Akatsuki off and managed to score a devastating strike. So 3 medals, 1 kill. Anyway, back to this lost Russian gold, all sitting at the bottom of the Atlantic. The post-war British government was quite keen to recover this gold because after World War II, Britain was on the bones of its arse. The country was almost bankrupt. But it wasn't until 1981 when a consortium of salvage operators managed to make a successful dive on the wreck lying 800 metres down at the bottom of the Atlantic, and by 1986 they'd managed to recover all but 5 of the bars of gold. In the process, establishing a diving record which has yet to be beaten to this very day. Now, Umbray has just fired some torpedoes back to the battle in the smokescreen, which you can just see over there to the right, and he's got battleship problems, and he's being targeted by anything up to 4 different ships at once here. However, his smokescreen is back off cooldown, so he uses it, and this is a turkey shoot. 3 battleships all in range. The Bismarck's given the best target, so he pumps the semi-armor piercing into him just in time to be rewarded by a torpedo strike on the Kiev that was lurking inside that smokescreen for his second kill. Torpedo warning going off behind him, stops to take a look. Yep, friendly torpedoes, nothing to worry about. And yep, there's the 3rd battleship, a North Carolina. The Nagato, starting to come under fire from Umbray's secondaries, and angled like that, it would be a waste of time firing the semi-armor piercing at him. The Bismarck, however, still presenting a very, very nice target, so he continues to pump the shots into that guy. Checking for his torpedoes, they're not quite up yet. Secondary starting to score hits on the Nagato, and that's a lot of enemy ships. This could be a bit of a problem, because this smokescreen is not going to last forever, and that Miyoko there has torpedoes. Very, very nasty torpedoes. So the Miyoko is the immediate threat here. He's going to put his own torpedoes in the water against the Nagato. Scored some citadels on the Miyoko. He's got his hydroacoustic search up and running, expecting torpedoes to be coming in from that guy. Gets another salvo off, finishes the Miyoko off with yet another citadel, creeps just to the very edge of the smokescreen in anticipation of the Miyoko's torpedoes, although the hydroacoustic search is running, and he doesn't really want to go any further than this because he is capping, and he doesn't really want to sacrifice all of those capture points that he's built up so far. It did look like he was going to be forced to bug out and abandon the cap, but the Nagato's down, the Miyoko's down, the Bismarck is in serious trouble, and is probably not going to last much longer, and ooh, his smokescreen's gone. Now that was some pretty nice timing. At the point where he popped his smokescreen, there were 4 ships targeting him, and 2, possibly 3 of those 4 ships were battleships, and he was well inside the main battery gun range, and he's only a light cruiser, and in fact he was inside the secondary gun battery range. In fact, here it comes, there's the Bismarck. And he could have done without that. That's a third of his health gone, and he has been set on fire, just as the Bismarck was sunk. Luckily, however, the Edinburgh does have a fantastic damage repair ability. It's quite possibly the best in the game. Most of that health has already been recovered, although the fire is still burning, but it's only 1 fire, and the damage repair is working to counteract the effects of the fire. But he'd gone from that situation where there were 4 ships targeting him, 3 of which were battleships, and then a Miyoko turned up as well. And in the length of time it took his smokescreen to dissipate, all of them were dead, other than the Bismarck and the North Carolina. The Bismarck died almost immediately, not before getting some shots off, which was a little unfortunate, and the North Carolina is now backpedaling behind the safety of an island as fast as he possibly can. Just in time for more trouble from the other end of the map. So he's put some shots into the Mayhan there and driven him off, and now he's switching fire to the Leander, the British Tier 6. Which is definitely the right choice here, because it's just a light cruiser, and he's showing the broadside of the ship, and so citadels ahoy. And oh crap, that's a Fiji. Okay, the British Tier 7 cruiser, the immediate predecessor to the Edinburgh, is a very, very dangerous ship. And now that the Fiji no longer has to worry about that geyser now, he's going to be turning his full attention to Umbray's Edinburgh. And with Umbray caught between the guns of the Leander, the Mayhan, and I think also a Prinz Eugen on one hand, and that Fiji on the other hand, he's popping his smoke. And the Fiji is turning, and it looked like he was about to try to get some torpedoes away. The hydroacoustic search is still on cooldown, but hey, let's just assume he managed to get his torpedoes into the water and act as if there are torpedoes incoming. So he turns the ship around to present as narrow a profile as possible to any torpedoes that may have been coming from the direction of the Fiji. Now this does of course mean that he ends up sailing out of his smokescreen, but it's probably the safest thing to do. And he continues to put some very effective fire into that Leander over there. He scored more citadels. The Leander is coming under concentrated fire from a number of different ships. He gets the rear turrets out. The Leander is dead, and with the Leander dead and the Fiji dead, the Mayhan on the wrong side of an island and that North Carolina over there on the wrong side of a smokescreen, he's no longer detected once again. So he can finally start breathing. Or can he? Because the North Carolina isn't the only thing down by that smokescreen. There's also a Prinz Eugen. Now the Prinz Eugen had been shooting at him, and he's just launched either a catapult fighter or a spotter aircraft, I'm not entirely sure which. So yep, once again Umbray is detected. And I think the Prinz Eugen deliberately drove out of the smokescreen in order to reacquire Umbray's Edinburgh so he could finish the job that he started. Umbray keeps the bows of the ship pointed towards the Prinz Eugen. The Prinz Eugen, never going to penetrate with armor piercing at this angle, is firing high explosive, and Hydroacoustic search, back off cooldown. Saw the torpedoes the second they were launched. Continues to ignore the Prinz Eugen for now. Keeping up the fire on the Mayhan, because he's got some torpedoes ready for the Prinz Eugen. And the Edinburgh, of course, British cruiser, can ripple fire its torpedoes. So he scatters them around. Prinz Eugen nom nom noms on all the torpedoes. Prinz Eugen down, kill number 4, but wait for it, wait for it. There's that pesky Mayhan. He's turning to get his torpedoes away. Not going to happen. Kraken unleashed and high caliber. And that just leaves the small matter of 2 North Carolinas left to mop up, and while he is detected, so far, none of them are actually targeting him. And as long as that situation continues, well, his damage repair is about to come off cooldown, and he's going to be able to recover. Again, the Edinburgh does have a very, very nice damage repair consumable. So he's going to be able to recover a large chunk of health, which is going to be needed if either one of those North Carolinas, and yep, the one that he's shooting at has finally realised there's a low health Edinburgh over here just waiting to get shot at, and here it comes. Umbray swerves, takes the sting out of the salvo from the first North Carolina. The second one has been sunk. This is now the lone surviving ship on the enemy team. He's just fired, which means that Umbray doesn't really need to worry about angling. He pops his smoke, but he's going a little bit too fast to stay successfully hidden within the smoke screen. And now it's just a question of putting as much damage as possible into this broadside on North Carolina and sinking him before he can reload his guns and finish the job that he attempted to start. He's still being targeted. Here it comes. But Umbray slowed right down. Those shots went long. The North Carolina's burning. And Umbray finishes the match with his 6th kill on the North Carolina. And 178,000 damage done with just over 500,000 credits earned. That's over 3,000 base experience, an absolute chest full of medals, and no big surprise, top of the team by both damage and experience. In fact, to be completely fair, that's a fairly creditable team performance as well. I mean, the enemy team got trashed. More than half of Umbray's team scored over 1,000 base experience in that game. So, yeah. A bit of a ruffle stomp for Umbray's team, but a hell of a performance from Umbray himself in the British Tier 8 Town Class Light Cruiser HMS Edinburgh. I hope you enjoyed today's video, folks, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.